Hello everyone, I'm Brian and welcome back. Let's go ahead and continue.
Today is Chandrakirti. Chandrakirti, one of the greatest Buddhist philosophers today, because he lived about 1500 years ago. He did not have much of a following in India, but later on his work took a new life in Tibet. Basically, Orthodox Tibetan Buddhism today, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the monks who follow him, the philosophy which he teaches is based on Chandrakirti's interpretation of Nagarjuna's interpretation of the Buddha. Buddha, let's not forget the Buddha. Buddha, I can imagine Buddha tearing his hair. I didn't say all this.
Well, yeah, with so many interpretations, that's the problem with like translating languages and an interpretation of an interpretation of interpretation of an interpretation. It's like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. So you're copying copies, and this copy is a copy of the copy. That's a copy of the copy of a copy of a copy. It's like it eventually gets, it ends up not looking like what it originally was. And actually, that's what Swami Mananda says, that it's always best to go back to the origin.
And Nagarjuna says, "You did, just keep quiet, let me explain it to them." So Buddha, the Nagarjuna 500 years after the Buddha, and about 400 years after Nagarjuna's Chandrakirti, who was also born in the south of India. I think he converted to Buddhism, and then he rose to great prominence as a Buddhist teacher, as a monk, and then he studied and he taught at the famous University of Nalanda, which is in Bihar today. Bihar, the word Bihar also comes from, it means Buddhist monastery, Vihara, where thousands of Buddhist monks used to stay together. Some of these monasteries became universities. Nalanda, Vikramshila, Odantapuri, Takshashila. So, huge university systems. Nalanda, when Nalanda was finally destroyed by Muslim invaders around 12th, 13th century, Bhaktiar Khilji, he raised the, for them they were all, heretics and kafirs, so no distinction between Buddhists, Hindus, whoever, so just kill them and wipe out, destroy the monasteries. By that time already Buddhism was sort of very faint in Hindu. It had diminished greatly. And Nalanda was destroyed. They said it burned for weeks, on months. They had a 7-story library, they say, that has not yet been excavated. If you go there, it's one of the wonders of the world. They have excavated a university which was established 1500 years ago, lasted for nearly 800 years, a university, and 1 kilometer long, and that's only 1/10 of the university. The rest still lies underground. If you go there, 11,000 students used to study, all male, of course, in those days. And each had his own room. So individual rooms. If you go there, you'll see little and pretty nice rooms. And we were lucky. What they did was, when the rooms and the buildings got damaged, instead of demolishing them and repairing them, what they did was they built over them. So nowadays it's great for archaeologists, because if you dig deep down, you find newer and newer universities. So, and you can see the last modifications, the last iteration of Nalanda University is pretty crude compared to the original one. So clearly the patrons, the kings, it was all, royal patronage. So clearly the kings were less powerful, less rich. But at that time, Nalanda was rising, 1500 years ago, when Chandrakirti was there. And he became one of the greatest teachers that Nalanda had.
Sorry, real quick, to comment about the university he was talking about, that's kind of the sad things that destroy a little bit of history and the amount of knowledge just contained in that. But I definitely got to check out what he's talking about. Let's see, 333, about the library, to see how big it is and how I don't know, every student had a single room, and it's a pretty nice room. That's pretty good. That's pretty amazing. I see why it's pretty big then. Every single student would have said 11,000 students, I believe.
And the abbot, with something like the head of the department of Buddhist studies or something. But there was something more than Buddhist studies also. If you go to Nalanda, you will find there's a little museum with not only Buddhist artifacts but also Hindu artifacts, clearly non-Buddhist artifacts. So Chandrakirti rose to great prominence there, and he's a very well-known teacher. Why am I going on about Chandrakirti? Because he wrote some books, commentaries on Nagarjuna, which finally sort of faded into obscurity. The debate took on different forms, and then slowly the Purva Mimamsa school led by Kumarila Bhatta, and then Shankaracharya's Vedanta school, they came to prominence. Buddhism declined and finally disappeared. Around 12th century, when Nalanda was finally destroyed and razed to the ground, it's interesting. That's when the oldest university in the West, Oxford, the oldest college in Oxford, Balliol College, that was coming up in the 13th century in England. I went to England, I saw the college and saw the date, 1280 or something. That's around the time that Nalanda finally collapsed. I think all those professors must have been reborn in to carry on their work. It's not impossible, because Ma Sharada, she went on a tour of the Buddhist, the ruins of the Buddhist monasteries once, and there were a group of English men and women who were also touring at that time. And the English men and women were oohing and eyeing about all these ancient relics. And then she was smiling. They asked her why she's smiling, and she said something very cryptic. Look at them. They are the ones who built all this, and now they come and wonder at their own handiwork. So maybe there are these ancient souls who've been, that's really tenure. Lasting for thousands of years across lifetimes. You become a professor wherever you go. All right. I've been avoiding starting the subject. Now,
sorry, I guess once you're in the trade, you're forever in the trade, and many lifetimes afterwards. Hey, you know, if that's something that you're passionate about, there's nothing wrong with that.
Let's start.
Oh.
So this Chandrakirti, what he did was, he focused his attack on the concept of self, Atma. And this he did by the 7-point reasoning. The 7-point reasoning, which I will run through quickly now, and then give a reaction from a Advaita perspective. Just by the way, why reaction from the Advaita perspective? Why do I have to do this? Because there is really no cogent reaction from the Advaita perspective. Those who debated against Chandrakirti and other Buddhist philosophers were the Hindu Naiyayikas, Sankhyas, and the Purva Mimamsakas. Advaita Vedanta was what you might call a Johnny-come-lately. So by the time Shankaracharya came and the followers of Shankaracharya and it flowered, the Buddhists were already fading away. So there wasn't a long, consistent debate. There was, but not enough. So Buddhists had no time to react against what these new Vedantists were saying, the Advaitins, the new formulations of Vedanta. They had no time to react. And the Advaita reactions against the Buddhists, if you see the classical texts, they're very dismissive, that these people are nihilists. They're saying that there's nothing real, which is unfair, because Nagarjuna dismisses that. He says, we are not nihilists. We're just saying, even that is not true, that there's no truth, that's not true. There is a particular truth, that's also not true. So, now, so I'll walk through Chandrakirti's presentation of his attack. Chandrakirti's works have now become very important because they were transmitted to Tibet, and the greatest lamas in the Tibetan tradition, they built upon Chandrakirti's work. So according to them, Chandrakirti is the right interpretation of Nagarjuna, who is the right interpretation of Buddha. If you want to understand Buddha philosophically, you understand Nagarjuna. You want to understand Nagarjuna philosophically, you understand Chandrakirti. Among the great Tibetan masters, of course, there was no connection between them, who were in the high Tibetan plateau, Himalayan plateaus, 500-600 years ago, working there on Chandrakirti. For them, India was this fabled land cut off. By the time India had descended into tumult, invasion, warfare, and general collapse, and the establishment of the new Mughal Empire and all. So they had sort of lost touch with India. And the Buddhists also had disappeared. So the Indians in general also had little interest in the Tibetan Buddhists. So they were cut off. But they developed Indian thought. They preserved it and developed it. Many of these texts were later recovered from Tibet. They had been lost when the libraries in India had been burnt. So the important ones whom we studied at Harvard, the Tibetan masters, Tsongkhapa, who lived about 600 years ago, he is deserves to be widely known across the world, because what Nagarjuna is to Buddhism, Indian Buddhism, what Shankaracharya is to Vedanta, Tsongkhapa is to Tibetan Buddhism, is that important, 600 years ago. So, for example, the school that he is the founder of, or the main philosopher, that's the school of the Dalai Lama. There are multiple schools of Tibetan Buddhism. There is the Sakyapa, the Kagyupa, there is the Nyingmapa, and the Gelugpa. The Gelugpa is a development based on the work of Tsongkhapa. The Gelugpa is the school of the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama always comes from the Gelug. There are particular monks, if you can see them with the yellow hats. So they're the Gelug monks. They revere Chandrakirti like nothing. I mean, they're like the greatest philosopher from India for them, Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti. So what I'm saying is the development of Chandrakirti's work, the commentaries of Tsongkhapa, another great Tibetan master, Mipham, who came later, who takes into account multiple Tibetan views and syncretizes them into sort of harmonizing Tibetan views. And an opposite view, the Karmapa Lama, who is the 9th Karmapa, Wangchuk Dorje, who lived up, I think, 400 years ago or so, who, in fact, attacked Tsongkhapa. So in Tibetan Buddhism also there's a lot of debate. On all of this is based what I'm going to say. Why this? Because I worked on it, of course, but also this is one of the most sophisticated attacks on the concept of Atma. And we are going to see one of the most sophisticated defense of the concept of Atma. So this is what we are going to see. The 7-point reasoning of Chandrakirti. What is he going to refute? That there is no independent self. You are there, he doesn't deny. But the idea that I am an immortal soul, I am an Atma, I exist eternally, I am not the body, not the mind. Then this self, what is its relation to you? Clearly you are there, and yet you think you are an Atma. So what is that relationship of the Atma to this body-mind? Just by the way, I will keep saying body-mind because it's easiest for us. The Buddhists, not just Tibetan Buddhists, not just Chandrakirti, all Buddhists, they talk about the 5 aggregates. Instead of body-mind, they analyze it into 5 aggregates or 5 pillars or 5 heaps. What is this body-mind? First, Rupa Skandha. Physical body, the form, the Rupa Skandha, physical body, the body aggregate. Then there is Vedana Skandha, that is feelings, pleasurable, painful, neutral, the sensations we get, Vedana Skandha. Then there is Sanskara Skandha, thoughts in our mind, mental formations. That's the third one. Mental, the pillar, the mental aggregate, mind aggregate. Then we are aware. We are aware all the time. Consciousness, Vijnana Skandha. But this awareness, remember, these are flashes of consciousness, moment to moment to moment. Then the last one is the Vijnana Skandha, and then the Rupa, Vedana, the Sangya. Sangya is the samskara and sangya, the 2 kinds of mental skandhas are there. So the conditioning, mental conditioning as samskaras, and sangya as the thoughts and feelings we get, the mind, all the perceptions which come, the 5 senses plus the mind, the 6 kinds of perceptions we have, internal thinking and external things which are coming from outside, that's called the sangya. So Rupa Skandha, the Vedana Skandha, the Sangya Skandha, Samskara Skandha, and Vijnana Skandha. This together is exactly, they're just trying to describe what you feel, what I feel right now. I'm just going to call it body-mind. Okay, that's easiest, body-mind. Chandrakirti would have said Pancha Skandha, 5 skandhas, 5 aggregates, but just the same thing, body-mind. For example, we study Vedanta. We all know Pancha Kosha. It's pretty similar, not exactly the same, but pretty similar. Physical body. The Annamaya Kosha, food sheath. Then the vital body, Pranamaya, the vital sheath. Then the mental body, the Manomaya. Then the intellect, understanding, Vijnanamaya. And then the causal body, the Anandamaya. But again, you can just call it body-mind, just what we have right now. So what is the relationship of self, Atma, with this body-mind? That is the question. He's going to examine this. To examine this, Chandrakirti uses the example of a chariot. So a chariot and its parts. Why a chariot? I guess chariot was the most sophisticated, cool thing you had in those days. Today he would have said an SUV or something like that. But
well, I mean, it made sense, you know, because the chariot itself is the body, and there are many different working parts behind it. And the mind or Atman is the chariot rider, the charioteer. Well, I'm wondering if he's gonna give us an example of the fact that, you know, was it him? Either him or Sadhguru that jokes about, like, you know, the guy saw, there's a standard by that saw someone riding on a horse. It's like, hey, where are you going? And the guy riding on the horse was, I don't know, ask the horse. So basically, he was describing the fact that the Atman was the guy riding the horse, and the horse is our body. And all the Atman is doing is just riding here, just answering questions, but, you know, have no control over the body to a degree.
It works like that. An SUV and its parts. You know, the body of the SUV, the wheels and the axle and the engine, the steering and all of that. And where is the SUV? The question is, what is the relationship of the chariot to its parts? Where is the self? What is the relationship of the so-called self, Atma, to the body-mind? Because body-mind, everybody agrees it's there. Nobody denies it. But what is the relation of the self to the Hindus? Then by Hindus, whom do I mean? Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purvamimamsa. They all claim that apart from the body, mind, and there is Atma. What is the nature of the Atma? Some will say it's pure consciousness, whatnot, but it's there, separate, independent, interacting, all together. So you have a trichotomous personality, that is physical body, subtle body, that is mind, and the Atma. Chandrakirti says, not at all. Let's see. Let's take a look. First, 7-point reasoning. First point, the chariot is the same as its parts. And he says it can't be so. Second point, I'll explain. Second point, the chariot is something apart from its parts. That's even more ridiculous. Then the chariot is something that is contained in the parts. It can't be so. The chariot is something that contains its parts. It can't be so. Then the chariot is something that possesses its parts. You know, these are my parts, like my hand, my hair, like that. Can't be so. And then the sixth one would be the chariot is just a collection of its parts. That also is not possible. And chariot is just the shape that emerges from its parts. The chariot is the shape, the configuration of its parts. That also is not possible. These are the 7 ways in which a chariot can be there, can be related to the parts. And none of them are viable. Chandrakirti is going to show exactly like that. There are these 7 ways you can talk about an Atma. None of them are logical. So there is no Atma. So this is the outline. Let me dive into it.
Interesting outline. I mean, some of it can make sense. Some of it just didn't make sense. But I mean, is he talking about just a chariot without the rider, and then becomes a bit of a different story? I assume there was a rider to it, that being the Atman itself. Now, just a chariot by itself, is there horses to it, or is it just the chariot, the wooden parts?
First, the chariot is the parts, is literally the parts. That is not true. Just the parts themselves of the chariot, then why would you use a term like chariot? If it's literally the axle and the wheels and all, and that's it. Why we call it a chariot? If body-mind is Atma, Atma is literally body-mind, then several problems emerge. And notice, all the Hindus also agree with you, in the Buddhists also, that Atma is not body-mind, but he's just considering the possibilities. The Buddhists themselves, Chandrakirti himself says, if you just call this Atma, first of all, he calls it as redundancy. Then just call it body. Call it mind. Why are you calling it Atma? Literally, there's nothing more to Atma than this. Then that's just the Atma. Then just the body, mind. Why call it Atma at all? Then next, it's not immortal. It's not immortal. You always claim it's an immortal Atma. It's not immortal. You also admit body dies. Third is that you always feel Atma is one. It is one, indivisible. The body is many. It's complex. There's enormous number of parts interacting, changing all the time. How can it be the Atma you are talking about? Notice, Advaita Vedanta, if you remember Aparoksha Anubhuti classes, Shankaracharya uses the same argument, Ekam Anekam. Atma is one, the body is constituted of many, therefore the Atma is not the body. Then many other problems. Like Hindus, Buddhists also believe many lives are there. If many lives are there, the body does not go across many lives. Body dies at the end of this life. Then it can't be the Atma. You're saying Atma persists over many lives. And then this body does not persist. So obviously, pretty obviously, the body is not the Atma the way you think. The self, eternal self, one self. No, it's not there.
No.
So the first point, the chariot and the parts are not the same. I mean, the chariot cannot be the parts. The first point was the chariot is the parts, not possible. The Atma is body-mind, not possible. And here there is no real difference, because all the other Hindu schools, including the Advaitins, would clearly agree on the same grounds that the body-mind is not Atma, is not the self.
Sorry. What if, I wonder, did it not say, what if the chariot, the name chariot's form and function, kind of like our bodies, you know, a body is, generally speaking, 2 arms, 2 legs, midsection, head, hair, you know, not necessarily all these parts, but most of these parts. I guess at least minimum the body and the head. Because you can be, you know, missing the limbs and you're still a body, obviously.
Good. We are agreed here. Next. Let's go on. The next option. The chariot is something different from the parts. And Chandrakirti says that's ridiculous on the face of it. I mean, it would really solve all your parking problems, you know. It's the parts which take up all the problem. If the SUV is different from the body and the wheels and the engine, then you can keep the parts at home and just come in your SUV. And then it'll be easy to park here. You can even bring it inside and keep it in the hall, because it won't take any space at all. The space is taken only by the parts. Where is the chariot apart from the parts?
That's interesting. It makes it seem like the chariot itself is the idea, which you can bring in. You can bring in an airplane idea. As a matter of fact, I'm carrying, here's the airplane right here. I'm bringing it in, parking it in my room. Airplane idea. But yeah, it's making it seem like the idea of chariot. Yeah, if you remove the parts and you just have the idea behind of what is a chariot or SUV or a plane, you can literally take that anywhere.
Yeah. So there is no chariot apart from the parts of the chariot, clearly. Where is this Atma apart from the body? Here was the biggest attack. This is the central attack of the Buddhist. You talk about body, mind. I agree, there is a body, there is a mind. There are the 5 aggregates. But apart from this, what is the Atma you're talking about? Demonstrate it. Nothing that you want to talk about, future lives, memory, all of those things don't require a separate, independent, eternal Atma. We can demonstrate, we Buddhists can demonstrate multiple lifetimes, memory, all of these are possible without an independent, separate Atma. In fact, with an independent, separate Atma, these are not possible. So there's a lot of discussion about this. At this point, you might think, Swami, so many years you have been telling us, not the body, not the mind, I'm the witness, the consciousness, drik drishya viveka, seer and seen. Whatever you see is an object, that which sees is separate from the object. Didn't you tell us, what about those arguments? Seer and the seen, you remember, drik drishya viveka, I am the witness. Whatever is experienced is an object, I am the witness, I am the experiencer, I am the awareness to which all these objects appear. And this witness, the drashta, the seer, must be on principle separate from the seen. Or the pancha kosha, famous 5 sheets of the human body, the annamaya, pranamaya, manomaya, vijnanamaya, anandamaya, and the witness consciousness of that. How many times have you told us the story of the 10th man? Separate. You could not separate it because you are looking at the object. This is the subject. So you separate. It's separate from the body-mind. Or avasthatraya, witness of waking, dreaming, deep sleep. So isn't it separate from all of it, the consciousness? Actually, no, it isn't. Swami, you're pulling a fast one on us. No, there's a point to it. We'll see the point later on. But it isn't. Even Shankaracharya, in Aparoksha Anubhuti, if you remember, after carefully analyzing the body-mind and showing that you, the self, cannot be the body-mind, you are separate, you are one, the body is many, you are unchanging, the body is changing, you are the witness, the body is the witnessed, you are aware, the body is not aware. So all of these arguments he shows to show that you are not the body. But if you remember, that's the 40th, 41st, 42nd verse of Aparoksha Anubhuti, very crucial. He says there, quite puzzlingly, what good is all this? Kim Purusharthata, what will be served? You have just proved that there is an Atma and there is a world and two separate realities. It's not non-duality. Then why do you do this?
Jesus, double negative.
There's a reason why the Advaitins do it. In order to counter those who say body-mind is the Atma. Our unreflective state of awareness is that I am this one. So I am body, I am mind. To convince us this can't be true. That's the only reason the Advaitins attack the concept of body-mind as self. The self cannot be body-mind. Then what is the self? We'll come to that. So actually, this is where the Buddhists and the Advaitins together differ from the Hindu dualists. The Hindu dualists, the Naiyayikas, the Sankhyas, Yoga, Vaisheshika, they all insist there is a self separate from body-mind, Atma. And then they engage in long debate, nearly 1,000 years debate, culminating with masters like Udayanacharya on the Nyaya side, who gave multiple proofs. There's a whole book which is still studied in postgraduate philosophy departments in India, Indian philosophy departments, that is Nyaya Kusumanjali. Atma Tattva Viveka. So Nyaya Kusumanjali, 9 proofs of the existence of God against the Buddhist. Atma Tattva Viveka, multiple proofs of the existence of a separate, eternal, independent soul. Atma against the Buddhists. So it's called Atma Tattva Viveka. Extremely subtle argument. Does it work? According to the Naiyayikas, it does. According to most unbiased observers, it's not so easy. Swami Vivekananda points it out in the 4th lecture on practical Vedanta. A tremendous Buddhist attack. Here is the world, it's a mass of change. Here is the body, it's a mass of change. Here is the mind, it's a mass of change. Physical matter, mental thoughts, and a stream of change. Apart from this, where is this Atma? Use the Vedantic logic. Oh, but who is the witness of all of this? That's the logic. I can see people vigorously. Yes, we have heard you so many years. Last 5-6 years you have been telling us the witness of all of this. Not the object. You are the 10th man witnessing all of this. Now, don't get scared. I'm going to cut that down. It isn't true. Why not? You see. This can be quite scary and traumatic for Hindus. But the reason I'm doing this is, at the end of this process, we end up with a deeper understanding of what Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta is. We are going to leave the poor dualists out in the cold, but we are going to see what Advaita Vedanta really means and the emptiness school of Buddhism, what they really mean. So, I'll quote Vivekananda again. This idea that I'm a continuous consciousness, literally I'm quoting Vivekananda. It seems he's saying anti-Vedantic things. This idea that I'm a continuous consciousness and thoughts, feelings, body, they're all continuously changing and I'm witnessing them. He says it works as an argument, but nobody in practice can separate the two. I am the witness of anger, hate, joy, peace, restless mind. I say these things. Restless mind, you are the one who experienced it. Peaceful mind, you are the one who experienced it. Waking, dreaming, deep sleep, you are the one who experienced it. But Vivekananda says, and Chandrakirti would say, he doesn't say because he never engaged with this, but he would say, if they are separate, show them separately. If two things are separate, my cloth and my cap are separate. I can show you the cloth without the cap. I can show you the cap without the cloth. Then I can demonstrate, you can experience their separate existence. Show me pure consciousness without any contents. Show me the contents of consciousness without consciousness. You can't. Nobody can.
And then you can do the... Hold on, let me...
Because they don't exist separately.
Whoa, I would have figured the first one would be, show me consciousness without content. I figured that'd be meditation, where you literally just draw a blank. I figured that'd be more probable than the other one. Sorry, the second one, whenever it said it, it got me. I mean, it's like the first one, yeah, I mean, that's what Raja Yoga is, I believe. You can meditate without, where you have, in a sense, blankness of the mind, blankness of your actions, karma, bhakti, and jnana. Although jnana is just a form of knowing that you're separate from things. But a separation between your physical, mental thoughts and your emotions. Once you silence all of that, you'll experience nothingness. And I figure that is pure consciousness without content. But...
show me the contents of consciousness without consciousness.
Now that, show me the content of consciousness without consciousness. Show me the content of consciousness without consciousness. You can't. According to Advaita Vedanta, that's impossible. Consciousness must be there for the content to be there. Well, for one, even if the content is separate from consciousness, the consciousness must be aware of the content. It's kind of, I'm wondering if this goes along the lines of, there's a saying, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a noise? You know, it's like, well, if no one heard it, you know, we don't know. Or it almost seems like, well, did it really even fall? Or, you know, maybe it did make a noise because everything that falls makes a noise, but only whenever we're aware of it, though. You know, you walk this path one day, like there's nothing there, and you come back the next day, all of a sudden there's a tree there. It's like, I don't remember that making a noise. It never made a noise, but because you weren't there. So you are the consciousness at that moment, and all of a sudden the content is supposed to be the noise. Hopefully that's not confusing. But because the noise was you don't know if the noise actually happened or not, because there's no consciousness to experience it. Therefore, you don't know if the content is there or not.
You can't. Nobody can. Because they don't exist separately. Chandrakirti has this thing. So what's going on here? If I am experiencing the changing world, and if you are saying that I am not unchanging, one unchanging consciousness, you can't show them separately. I see that you can't show them separately. But then what's going on here? How do you explain this? Chandrakirti has an analogy, which Vedantins, for good reasons, never use. The sheaves of hay leaning against each other. You know, hay, you bundle them up and keep them like this. But if you pull out one, what happens to the other one? It falls. You, the experiencer, you, the consciousness, and that, the experience, that, the object of consciousness, they lean against each other. Remove one, the other will fall. You are the seer of what? Nagarjuna would say. You see, right? I am seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. What? Forms, sounds, smells, tastes. Forms, sounds, taste, do they exist without you, the consciousness? I can't say that. You, the seer and the hearer and the smeller and the taster, is it possible that you exist without the objects which you are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting? Difficult to say.
That's the example I kind of just gave about the tree falling and you crossing that path. Yeah, well, you don't know, you know. It's like, maybe it did. I mean, typically when you're there and you see something fall, it does make a noise, unless it weirdly doesn't. Well, unless the matrix messes up and then it just plops and doesn't make a noise.
We Vedantins will say, no, you know, it's like when the object is gone, you are no longer the seer of the object, but you remain, not as a seer anymore. But then that's a kind of, like a accounting, they do a little bit of back calculation to make things fit, make the books balance. Swami Vijnananandaji, when he was Swami in Allahabad, he had his own ways. He would keep books of account. And then one day he couldn't make 5 rupees, you know, he couldn't account for 5 rupees. Then he put it down GOK account, five rupees. Somebody asked him, "What's that GOK account, Swami?" He says, "God only knows." God only knows. Now it balances. I am unchanging consciousness, illumining all the changing phenomena of the world. Suppose the changing phenomena of the world are not there, can you show you yourself as unchanging consciousness? Sure. In deep sleep, changing phenomena of the world stop. And I shine forth into the blankness. How do you know? Well, I wake up and I tell you this. That's how I know. No. And that might be all right. You might believe in that, but that's not good philosophy. I remember when I entered the Madhyamaka class, emptiness class on emptiness. So can you imagine, intense class on nothingness. You ask, what are you studying there?
Nothing.
Debating fiercely. Nothing. It's all empty. The professor told me, keep your Advaita outside the door, Swami, because he knew I would mix it up with this. So you learn it separately, and then. But interestingly, outside the class, just outside the Harvard yard, I ran into this Buddhist Lama. Lama Migmar. If you look him up, later on I realized he's quite an eminent person. He is the Buddhist chaplain, Tibetan Buddhist chaplain for Harvard University. I just ran into him in the street and he looked at me and said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm studying your philosophy." And he was very happy. He wanted to know which books I'm studying and all of that. And he recommended some more books. And then he said, "But you are a non-dualist, an Advaitic monk." I said, "Yes." "Oh, it's the same." He said. But how it's the same, we'll come to it at the end. So the second one, that you are apart, Atma, self is apart from body and mind.
We'll pause it right there for the next one. We'll save the part 2 for that, so I'll rewind it. That is interesting. I don't understand how it's not possible for consciousness to exist without the content. He didn't really explain that part. Do any of y'all know? I get the content cannot exist without the consciousness, because I mean it's like saying, well, if something exists out there, someone has to know about it in order for it to exist. Otherwise, it may not exist. I mean, what proof is there that it exists if something or someone's not aware of it? So consciousness must be aware of something for something to exist. That's what I'm getting at, or that's what I'm understanding from what he's saying. It would make sense, you know. I mean, if there's something out there that no one and nothing's aware of it, well, does it exist? And considering that you think everything's pure consciousness, Brahman. But then I figured, again, the consciousness without content seems very probable. I assume you meditate, deep sleep, like you said, actually that's a very simple one, deep sleep or meditation, where meditation very much more the difficult portion of it, because you have to clear your mind, thoughts, and your body, make sure it's not itching or scratchy or things tingling all over your arms, so you can focus on meditation. But in deep sleep, where you have the blankness, a consciousness without content, unless the blackness is the content, then okay, but I don't think of blackness or emptiness as content. So how is that, or did I misunderstand him about the consciousness without content? Let me know. Anyways, that's part 2 for Vedantic Self and the Buddhist Non-Self. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.